Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Casting Seeds. I'm Savannah, your host, and you are about to listen to part 2 of my interview with the beautiful and wonderful Liz Wickham. You are also going to get the inside scoop of our very first and brand new Facebook page that opened up for Casting Seeds so that we can have open discussions and kind of go over hot topics that are discussed throughout episodes, because we wanted to have more of a conversation space, and that was asked for on Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, my Instagram is Holistic Wife, and whether or not you guys want us to start an Instagram for Casting Seeds, we're going to leave up to you through our Facebook feed. We also want to ask you guys to please like, share, and review through any podcasting network that you're listening to, and specifically on Apple Podcasts, because that's where we get the most traffic and the highest ratings so far, which is so exciting. All of your guys' ratings across all the boards have been so beautiful to read and to listen to, and we can't wait to share some of those as well through the Facebook network. If you guys have any other questions, please contact both Jeremiah and I directly, but let's get back to this awesome and super knowledge-filled episode. That's so sweet. How did you communicate to him that those things meant a lot to you throughout pregnancy? Where you could tell, like, oh, he enjoyed that compliment.
I think he saw the fruit of it more than my words. Like, because I'll always say thank you and stuff, but once he saw the actual benefits from what we did, he was like, "Oh wow, I really helped."
Fruit of your labor.
Yes, exactly. He really saw how helpful that was and his role in that process.
So how then, going into your two births, because I know they were different. One was at the hospital and one was at home. Mm-hmm. How did you feel like he supported you through those experiences? And you can talk about them differently or even just general things, but I feel like that's something that a lot of, until men are thrown into it, they're like, I don't know what to expect. Like, I'm here for you. What can I do? And sometimes it can be overbearing or the exact opposite, where they're not checking in enough. Yeah. Well, how did you feel like he did? I mean, obviously he did a great job balancing those things. So I guess that's why I'm asking you, because we'd love to hear what specifically was that awesome balance. And obviously it'll be different for every woman, but
it's funny because I look back at Ridgely's birth, the first one where we ended up leaving for the hospital, and I'm in the most intense part of my labor, active labor, kind of transitioning in the shower. And I had this list of things for Richard to get.
Oh, so sweet of you to have.
But like, to take to the hospital, right? And I remember being mad at him that, like, why aren't you here with me? But he was just dutifully doing what I had told him to do, like gathering things to take to the hospital.
Like, I take it back. Get over here.
But I just remember really appreciating how he was excited and positive. His demeanor and his attitude during both of my labors was like, "You got this, baby doll." Like just very almost gleeful. He was just so excited and so confident in me and in the birth. He was not scared. Helps that he's not squeamish, like he's not kind of freaked out by medical things, so that helps. But that was just really
empowering, it sounds like.
So encouraging to be able to look up from the hospital bed, because I was just so uncomfortable on that dang hospital bed, that when I would look up at his face and just see him encouraging me with his just expression, I really was like, it was like a lifeline. It really meant so much to me. And guys don't realize how important that is. Like, the emotional support that you provide as a husband is literally physiologically part of the birth, because when you as a wife are receiving oxytocin, the hormone oxytocin, from your husband's presence and his encouragement, his skin to skin contact, your whole birth, so cortisol lowers, right? And your whole birth goes more smoothly, as you know. So that is a very practical, essential thing that husbands can provide.
Well, and that's the thing too, and that's what I'm going to get into a little bit after this, is just being a biblical Christian, like, husband. And even attitude is like Jeremiah and I talk about that all the time, like checking in with our attitude. Because even just like the slightest roll of the eyes, or especially when you're expressing like, I'm in pain or I'm hurting and I'm suffering, and then someone gives you kind of a scoffing, like, Okay, well, it's not a big deal to me.
Oh yeah, minimizing what you're going through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know that can happen a
Don't
lot.
want to minimize in labor.
Yeah, could you imagine? But that's why I'm saying, like, I couldn't even, if that hurts, and that would hurt any of us outside of labor and the emotions and the hormones through childbirth. But if it hurts then, imagine tenfold, 30-fold, 1,000-fold it would be in birth. So I think attitude is like a huge aspect of
Yes.
childbirth, because then it also affects yours, which one of my favorite stories you've ever told me, it was even that clenching story.
Oh yes.
Because his attitude and demeanor was okay, but
Yes.
internally.
So a woman was in labor. I think this is in Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth, and that book. And she's in labor and she's really struggling to push the baby out. She's fully dilated. She's all ready to go.
And this is a natural childbirth too, at home.
Yes, at home. And her husband was sitting behind her. She was leaning against him. And they didn't know, but for hours he had been holding his urine. He was
He had to pee.
He had to pee super bad, but he didn't want to like leave his wife. He was being a dutiful husband. And he was like, I gotta be here for you, babe. But he was clenched internally, and she sensed that. Like her body sensed that.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure it out. The midwives were like, what's going on? Right. So yeah, they didn't realize until after she had finally struggled this baby out that he's like, I gotta go pee. And they're like, oh.
That could have helped hours ago if you just went to the restroom.
Yes.
But it's funny because, like, we are emotional creatures and beings. Like, God was emotional. We are physical beings and then also spiritual, right? So especially when you've become one flesh with somebody, you can sense things about them and know things about them, sometimes without even them noticing it.
Yep.
But that's why I love that story so much, because I feel like that exudes even when whether or not you're in a discussion with your husband or a heated argument or going through something intense or even going through something beautiful and intense like labor.
Yeah.
That type of, in every aspect, it's almost like your senses are so much more heightened when it comes to labor.
You're so vulnerable physically,
Yes.
spiritually, and emotionally. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
And
an opening of yourself.
And that's why the submission aspect can be so hard for women, especially if their husband is not also being submissive to Christ.
Yes.
Obviously not to hit their wife in any way, shape, or form, even through birth, but submitting to God, like, okay, God, I trust you with my wife. I trust you with my baby. I am entrusting that you've created my wife beautifully to do things properly. And to hear that Richard did that for you is so amazing.
And if any women are struggling with getting their husbands on board with natural birth or home birth, like if that just freaks him out, men really respond well generally to statistics.
True.
Right? So if you can just present evidence-based research to him, that will be hugely beneficial, I believe.
Remember, ladies, I gave some research at the beginning. So if you need to go back and jot down those numbers, which I always feel like at the beginning of every episode, I should give a caveat, all right, like get your notes, your pens and papers ready, because there's a lot of info in this episode, even just for Bible verses. Like you've given some beautiful ones that I didn't have on here, but I wanted ladies to know too, and men who are listening. And I would love to encourage for men and women, and I should say couples, to listen to this episode together so that you can have these discussions and check in and be like, well, if we know we're going to get pregnant or we are pregnant, are we doing these things, especially biblically? Like, are we checking in and loving on each other and being attentive in this way? But besides the Ephesians 5:33, which is beautiful, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, because the divine guidelines are to honor and uplift your wife. It's also good to understand that I have like 3 things that I think a husband should be. I think they should be her cornerstone, be her advocate, and be her iron, like her ironing. I'm sorry, 4, ironing, sharpening iron. And then the last one is be her protector, which these are all things that obviously friends do to a degree and Christ ultimately does. But men, you are the first and foremost, like there's God and then there's you for us ladies. And is it okay if I go through those really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Love this.
So be her cornerstone is Proverbs 31:28. It states that her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. So it's refraining from belittling her choices or the things that she presents to him as like and obviously she should not have any type of agonizing ultimatums with him as well. But when she presents choices or says like, these are things that I'm struggling with, not belittling her, or, lovingly calling out if she is doing the ultimatum thing, and be a loving leader over her and let her know that her calling in Christ is an individual job and holds immense value in his life. So, which again, Richard did beautifully. All these things he did great. I just want to encourage you, Richard. So being her cornerstone is like how God is our cornerstone in our life, right? Like he helps stabilize us. He helps us set that firm foundation. And our husband, it is their job to lovingly reset that, like, hey, this cornerstone's getting a little cracked. But that means he has to be that loving, kind, firm base and foundation for us as well. So being her advocate is the next one. 1 Corinthians 7:4 says that the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. So cheer her on in her triumphs and her trials. Be her cheerleader. Be there for her. Let her know that you believe in her abilities and the nurturing spirit through encouragement. Because being her advocate, especially like if she knows like, okay, I'm really sick and I know that the kids are running around like crazy, I don't even have to yell out to my husband to go fix that situation. I'm going to hear him in the next 30 seconds to take care of that. Or in labor, bringing it back to that, if I'm in so much like intense, immense pressure and focusing on protecting our child and pushing out our baby properly, and the nurse or midwife says something and it's a hard no that we've discussed, and I know my husband's going to defend me and stick up for me the same way that Jesus has done that on the cross for us.
Right.
Being her iron and sharpening iron. I kind of mentioned this a little bit with the first one, but 1 Peter 1:22 through 23, 22 starting, having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love. Love one another earnestly from a pure heart. And 23 says, since you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and abiding word of God, be considerate, treating your wife with respect and acknowledging her as an equal partner in life. So sharing the daily load of submissiveness through Christ is basically what this is saying. And I'm sorry, it ended at through the living of an abiding word of God. So what I'm saying, this is not a Bible verse. Be considerate, treating your wife with respect and acknowledging her as an equal partner in life. Even though you are the headship, she is still a partner. That's the reason why you hear that that cheesy thing. She came from your rib, not from a foot bone,
right?
Like to step on her, right? So checking in with her and really looking at her as, like, this is someone who cares about me. She's not my enemy. She's not trying to take me down and tear me down. And I would never do that to her, especially as a leader, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
A great summary verse for all of that is 1 Peter 3:7. Did you have that one?
I have 1 Peter 1:7, but yes, 1 Peter 3:7 I had for later, but that's so funny. Okay. No, yeah, say it. You can say it.
So it's husbands likewise dwell with them, your wives, with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. So understanding, like, you have to understand your role in this.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of your first area as even a parent, is understanding your wife in pregnancy and understanding labor, and then understanding her the research that she's presenting, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Well, especially because not that men aren't going to be interested in it, but women, we're going to be way more interested in this than our
typically
husbands.
She does more of the information gathering.
Well, and that's also too, that's what women do naturally, even for their home, right? When they're preparing their home, they like the nesting.
Yes.
We do that as well for our bodies because we're now preparing a home for 9 to 10 months of a child being inside of it. So also, ladies, don't get super offended when you're like, guess what? I just, giving like facts that your husband's gonna be like, okay, congratulations.
I just had bloody show.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just had mucus. Can't wait to hear
Great.
that. Yeah, exactly. But the last one, be her protector. 1 Peter 1:7. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing her honor to the woman as the weaker. Well, wait. Is that 1 Peter 1:7?
Oh, did I write the wrong reference?
I think that it.
I'm sure. Well, it's either
We'll
chapter
look it
1 or
up.
chapter 3.
I think it's 1 Peter 1:7.
Okay.
Who
You're
knows?
right.
You know what? I'm probably wrong. Whatever. So that's why I was like, I have 1 Peter 1:7 here, but that sounds really familiar. So exactly what Liz said in being your protector, because ultimately, if you are her protector, first and foremost, so like in her weakest moments and her strongest moments, then you are going to be her iron in every situation. And then you will be her advocate in every situation, let alone her cornerstone, right? Mm-hmm. So the same way that the fruits of the Holy Spirit are built up in a certain way that you have to get through one to really get to self-control, the end. I wanted this to be similar, where you have to first be her cornerstone to then be able to be her advocate. Mm-hmm. And then if you're truly her advocate, then you're always going to be a loving, ironing, sharpening iron friend to her. And then ultimately her protector. So ladies, out of everything, if you're trying to figure out how to broach that subject with your husband, if you feel like he's struggling in any one of those things, you can have these verses. And you know what? Please someone comment and tell us, is it 1 Peter 1:7 or 3?
I feel like it's 3 because I saw the end of the book in my Bible when I was looking. I don't know.
I'm going to say it's probably me making the mistake, which is fun. So we looked it up and Liz was correct. It's 1 Peter 3, which is, now I want to kind of look up what 1 Peter 1 is. But either way, 1 Peter 3:1-7. But going off of that and into the third section today, physical changes. I'm going to be asking Liz about the physical changes through birth and stuff like that. I have some hormones and stuff that I'm going to be speaking about. But I know, Liz, through your birth stories and stuff that you've collected and through your own personal birth stories, that you went through a lot of physical changes, just for your body, mentally, emotionally, and even curating that postpartum afterwards, right? So I would love to, and I'm sure the listeners would love to hear what your basic, we've been recording for a while. What are the wow. I'm trying to say biggest.
Oh, biggest. Okay.
But basic.
You can't say it.
Because of physical afterwards.
Biggest. You got
physical.
Lean into the biggest.
Okay. What were the biggest physical changes that you had to work through your pregnancy? And then same thing through your labor and then postpartum.
Okay. So with pregnancy, gestational diabetes is usually often can be a result of already some insulin resistance. And so just having that highlighted and having to recover from that twice really close together, because my kids were born 18 months apart. Right? Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, has taken me a while to recover from, to get my insulin back sensitive again, and to kind of have my blood sugar under control. Even just the weight gain and the weight concentration around the belly with that that specific affliction is challenging for me, still to control and to stay on top of. So that's been God has done some sanctifying work in just learning more about health and how to take care of myself. Even though I feel like it was really healthy before. like I cook from scratch all the time. I didn't really understand why I had gestational diabetes.
You're like, I use coconut sugar. No. What are you talking about? Well, that's everyone's body is different and also uses hormones differently too.
Yes, exactly.
So it will change. And also, you guys, Liz is like very petite and very healthy.
Yeah. So I'm like, why me? But no, so that, and also restless legs. I had really bad restless legs with Ridgely, and it got worse with Elena. Which is often, for me, it's linked to mineral deficiency. Mm-hmm. So I actually had to do a parasite cleanse recently and then as soon as I did the cleanse, like a week after doing that, my restless legs just stopped because they didn't go away after Elena's pregnancy.
Yeah, because they were eating literally the extra minerals because I gave you and told you for a while, like, you need to take extra minerals.
Oh, I was taking
and liver support and
so
all
many
these
minerals
things
all day long. I was drinking
it's
minerals. I was
expensive.
taking minerals. I was taking stuff right before bed just to like get through the night.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, 1 week after that parasite cleanse. So pro tip for any of you restless leggers out there, do a parasite cleanse.
Just not while you're pregnant.
Right. So that was hard. And just aching feet in the first pregnancy, like the sudden weight gain. I remember my feet just being like,
Did they get swollen or did they grow?
They grew. I grew a whole foot size, a shoe size.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I'm kind of back down to like halfway in between.
Really?
Yeah. I was a 6 before I was pregnant, and now I'm 6.5, but I grew to a 7. Yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But yeah, so moving to postpartum, physical changes.
Or labor, I guess.
Oh, sorry, labor. I skipped labor. Physical changes with labor. I guess the only thing I can really think of is
because you know how some people get like tears or injuries.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. Is like I have a couple of minor tears with Ridgely, and I remember, and Elena too. I had like one little tear with Elena, and I remember feeling like, oh, things, are just a little bit different after that, and it's not affected me in any way that's negative, so that's fine. But
yeah,
just feels different. I got some hemorrhoids after Ridgely's first birth, and that was very painful.
That's very common.
Yeah,
especially
it's common.
for the first.
They healed up. It's no biggie. So yeah, other than that, I wouldn't say any like major negative things through labor as far as physical changes.
Okay. That's great.
Other than being sore, 'cause it's a hard workout.
Oh yeah.
That
I remember your whole body.
Yeah, Richard gave me a nice back massage the day after I gave birth to my son,
So sweet.
our first birth, which was amazing to just lay on my stomach. That alone was like, and then have a nice back massage because I was so sore.
Yeah. I mean, well, because it's like getting your muscles just like that light touch of like, you did a good job afterwards, which I could tell it does happen sometimes during labor. That sensation can be so much that people are like, get off of me.
I did not want to be touched during labor.
Yeah.
I was shocked because I'm a super touchy person.
I feel like I'd feel the same way.
Yeah.
I'd want someone to like maybe hold me. Actually, Jeremiah and I have this joke because I told him, I'm like, if we have a tub, I want you in the tub with me. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Never in a million years. And I told him, I was like, I bet it'll be different when I'm literally like roaring out of my mind and I want you in the tub. You'll be in that tub with me.
I don't know. I was in the tub with Elena, and I told Richard beforehand, I was like, you don't have to get in the tub. But it was nice to have him like right in front of my face, right outside the tub, I liked that.
Yeah, for support and being able to see him. Yeah. Okay, and so then going into postpartum, and out of all three of these, which one would you say was the most difficult or different for you? And I know like for postpartum obviously can last longer for women. But out of all three of them, before you get into postpartum, which one was the hardest for physical changes?
So 2 postpartums. The first postpartum was definitely the worst. Actually, I had a correct instinct to fear. I feared postpartum more than I feared the birth, actually.
Really?
When I was doing my education, yeah. Not fear, but I was more nervous about. I was like, so many women struggle with breastfeeding and all the different things. But
there's so many aspects to postpartum.
Basically because of some unnecessary interventions postpartum in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
I had a much harder time. So I ended up with a UTI very soon after I gave postpartum because apparently my placenta or my bladder was so full that they said I couldn't deliver my placenta because my bladder was in the way. I have since learned that doctors are only paid 15 minutes after your baby is born. So they're in an all-fired hurry to get your placenta out. And that's why there's so much postpartum hemorrhaging, because the doctors are pulling on that cord and pummeling pummeling the mother's tummy to try to get that placenta out because they don't want to be there and on unpaid time.
Why wouldn't they pay the doctors for you to have your full birth? Because placenta is part of your full birth.
It's a part of the birth, right? And it's very normal for that to take even an hour, like longer.
30 minutes to an hour.
So I think they were just in a hurry, and they were like, "We're going to have to catheterize you to get your placenta out.
I had no idea this happened to you.
So as soon as I heard the word catheter, I was like, I'm going to get a UTI. And sure enough, because you're in the hospital and you just had a baby and you're not drinking water like you normally would. It's so dry in the hospital and you're not sleeping because they wake you up all stinking night for 2 nights in a row. It's like, why would you? Anyway.
I actually saw a funny video on that where a lady came in and was pretending to be the nurse, like the nurses that she had on staff when she was giving birth.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, mommy, like time for you to rest and we'll try pushing again in the morning. And then every 5 minutes she's coming in like she's like, okay, mom, time to take your temperature. Yep. Okay, mom, like all these different things.
They can't coordinate it all at once. It's like everyone from every department all day, all night long.
Yes. And you get like maybe 10 minutes of sleep.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. And then your baby's waking you up to eat. So anyway, yeah, negative experience. But basically the next day I started taking like the painkillers that they gave me for just normal after birth pain. And I didn't realize that I had a raging fever until like 2 or 3 days later. And I just
Could you not feel it?
I felt this like pulsing in my lower back that I didn't. I'm a first time mom. I'm like, I don't know what postpartum feels like. So I'm like, maybe this is normal, you know?
Yeah.
And then I go off the pain. It was like Motrin. It was like really strong, you know, Motrin or something. I go off of that and all of a sudden I had a 103-degree fever.
Wow.
And I'm at home and it was so miserable. And I was also extremely engorged because my milk had come in on the day that we were supposed to go. Of course, they make you go back to the hospital to check in for, it's like your 1 day or your 3-day check-in or something with your baby in the hospital. Because we're in a postpartum sleepless haze. We got the appointment time wrong. So we were in the hospital for like 4 or 6 hours, like a long time. Ugh. And my milk was coming in. And so I couldn't nurse. Like it just was not a good setting it was like, somehow I wasn't comfortable. I was trying to figure this thing out with my baby.
Yeah. And, everything's new. And then you're doing it around.
Yeah.
Like surgical equipment.
I was incredibly painfully engorged and I was, had this UTI, this fever. And so, yeah, the first weekend we were in the ER for me. And then the second weekend we were in urgent care. I had to get, I still remember like trying to nurse Ridgely and I had this IV in my arm because I had to get fluids or something for my, I can't even remember now, for my UTI, but yeah. And Ridgely we had jaundice, which is normal for babies when they're born. Jaundice. Yeah. Usually they're fine. You just set him in the window for a little bit or take him outside, but they insisted on sending him home with this big, like blanket that I had to wrap him in. And I feel like that affected our initial bonding. That and the fact that I was really sick. Now looking back, having had a really natural postpartum with Elena, I'm like, oh, I just didn't feel as in love with Ridgely initially because I was so wrapped up in being sick and getting his jaundice thing taken care of. He had to always be in this blanket.
You had to go into work mode.
Oh, it was not fun. Yeah, it was so not fun.
Which can you breastfeed when your temperature is that high?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know.
You're the only source. So yeah, but
I just was thinking like whether, cause I don't see it being bad by any means, but if your body's also trying to get rid of something, I just don't know if, and I do have breastfeeding people who are going to come on this later. So I can actually use that as a later question. Yeah. If you have to pump or anything like that.
No, it was just a really hard experience because of, I think I asked my midwives later with the midwives I worked with Elena. I was like, hey, my bladder was really full. They said that they had to catheterize me. Do you think, what would you guys have done? Like, was that necessary? And they were like, cause I felt like I needed closure, honestly.
Fair.
And they were like, that would have been an extreme last resort. There were so many other things that we could have done.
Did they say any of the other things?
Like waiting. Waiting for your body,
letting you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Waiting for the placenta to just come and not trying to rush it in 20 minutes.
That's also one of the reasons why I love water birth so much though, because naturally, like things can be excreted, right? During the pushing of birth, but that includes urine.
Yes, exactly. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But but it's natural
Yeah.
and normal and healthy
Yeah.
because, and also too, our bodies are so smart. Our bodies know to do that after the baby comes.
Exactly.
Because
It's like a major surgery or something. You don't go to the bathroom right away.
yes,
Um,
that's why you had a full bladder after you gave birth.
and Richard was so sweet. He was like pumping me full of apple juice the whole labor. He's like, apple juice, apple juice, apple juice.
So cute to give you your electrolytes.
Just to give me energy, right?
Yeah.
And some fluids. But yeah, so that was, you know,
So that compared to Elena's then
Elena's
postpartum.
postpartum was,
Because I saw you, what, a day after?
yeah.
Jeremiah and I
she
came
and
over?
Jeremiah came over and made me this feast of a breakfast. And it was like the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen. I ate like half of the table.
And it was so funny because Jeremiah was like shocked because Liz can eat. She's a healthy eater.
Yeah.
But Liz ate like the amount of all of us put together. And I remember him when we got in the car, he was like, I didn't know Liz could eat that much. And I laughed and I was like, honey, she literally just, it's like running like every day.
It's like running a marathon.
It's even more, well, because they say that every day in pregnancy, just pregnancy, is like doing the Tour de France for your body and then winning, the excitement of winning.
Yeah.
So imagine then labor, like birth.
Yep.
I was like, honey, if all of that was built up over the past 9 to 10 months, like
You're famished. You think you're hungry in pregnancy and then you breastfeed and you're like, oh, this is
not
hunger.
even, but like birth and then breastfeeding right
exactly.
after. And I was like, we were there in like 24 hours of you giving birth.
Yes.
And he's also never held a baby that small in his life. So holding Elena was like life-changing for him.
So even just that, like being able to have your friends over freshly postpartum and having them cook you a home cooked meal in your kitchen.
Yeah.
I remember my doula, I had just given birth. It was like a few, I don't know, they let us have a couple hours and then she went into my kitchen and she made me this nice, yummy, like oatmeal thingy and brought it to me. And then a couple hours later, she made me eggs with avocado. She just knew to keep bringing food.
Yeah.
To just replenish strength. And yeah, the midwife with Elena was like some of the fondest memories of my life, like my wedding and that, because it was so amazing to just lay back in my own bed with my sweet new baby and not be woken up and just conk out and sleep and
Rest with her.
yeah. And just honestly, the privacy and the sanctity of that space, enjoying all those bonding special moments without strangers there. I'm extroverted. And even I was like, wait, okay, who else is going to come in this room and see me like with my top half off and like,
Yeah.
when I was, in the hospital. So it was just amazing contrast. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because I was always used to the idea, because my family's Hispanic, and for all you Hispanic Italian ladies out there, you guys will understand. Even in the video, like the home birthing video that my mom has of me, it was wild because my dad's dad, my grandpa, was the one filming like full frontal of me coming out of my mom.
Whoa.
And I could not even imagine my Jeremiah's dad filming or being any, like, I love Jay a lot, but that is so weird to me.
Yeah.
But my, like, coming from that background, also my family like wasn't Christian at that point. We are now, so it's different. Like, I feel like the sanctity, like you were saying, and that privacy of intimacy and even just serenity, right?
Yeah,
that you get to have with each other. It's hard to bask in that in front of everybody consistently all the time, because also then Christians, we have that, and women specifically, we get that hostess mode a little bit, where we want to provide. Oh, my computer wasn't muted. Sorry, you guys. But having that sanctity and that servitude and like wanting to host, right, then plays into it, where you kind of get like, oh, I want to provide and I want to do all these things, when you should just be focusing on you and your baby, like what you were just saying. Which also through physical changes, I wanted to detail specifically like the human growth hormone, or I guess it's called HCG, which a lot of people use in an inappropriate way to boost their muscle mass. For men specifically, this hormone is only made during pregnancy, which is awesome. And that's that when you urinate on the stick to see if you're pregnant, the HCG hormone, this is why it's the only hormone made during pregnancy. So that's how you can tell when you're pregnant. And then it's made almost exclusively in the placenta. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So that's why when you give birth to your placenta at the end, it's like that huge weight that comes off. And obviously I can't speak of this, but I know Liz, when you give birth to your placenta afterwards, that huge weight, that kind of like,
I will tell you, it is the best feeling in the world.
yes. And it's because specifically when that, like that thing that's pumping the HCG in your body is now removed, your body goes, okay, we're officially not pregnant anymore.
Yeah. Your body, you think kind of like, oh, it's just me again.
Yes. Yeah. It's like that sense of relief, but it even happens hormonally.
Yeah.
Also, there's human placental lactogen, or better known as HPL. This hormone is also known as the human chronic, this is such a big word, Samatamagra. Try to read this, Liz.
I can't even see it.
Samatag.
Samatamatrotrophin.
That word. Yeah. Basically, it's made also by the placenta, and it gives nutrition to the baby. So it also stimulates milk glands in the breast for breastfeeding. So when women start getting that feeling before they even know that they're pregnant, sometimes like that swollen breast and nipples and, or I should say areolas specifically. And when they start getting those changes in their body, it's the combination of HCG and then HPL. And if your HCG is high, that's great. But if your HPL is low, that's normally when progesterone tends to be lower, which on here, progesterone it's the hormone that's made by the ovaries and by the placenta during pregnancy. And it stimulates the thickening of your uterine lining for implantation and the fertilization of the egg for sperm. But if that progesterone stays low, then it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. Then the HPL will be low, which means your baby's not going to get very good nutrition. And that's what a lot of women are struggling with today. And even really low estrogen levels, which, and just, I wanted to give like an overall because I feel like women hear these terms and they don't really know fully what they are. But estrogen specifically is not just one hormone. And that's what bothers me so much about these estrogen tests, because so many women will go into doctor's offices and like, well, your estrogen's low.
And you see estradiol and
what estrogens though? Because they're a group of hormones that develop in the female sexual traits, right? And let me just say this. There are two genders, male and female. Okay. Just in case people are confused. Two genders. That's it. Thank you. Amen. All done. And it's normally formed. These are also formed in the ovaries, specifically for estrogen. It's also made by the placenta during pregnancy to help maintain a healthy pregnancy. So if your estrogen starts dropping, your progesterone starts dropping, that's when you know that there's something wrong or off with it, with your pregnancy. And that's why people like me who struggle with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, your thyroid and ovaries are not corresponding properly on how much estrogen to make. And then your testosterone levels raise. And then your progesterone levels are hard to get higher. Your HPL is hard to get higher, but you can still, like me, I'm able to get pregnant very easily. My HCG is super high, but I have lower progesterone and HPL levels, but you can raise them by helping heal the PCOS, which means helping heal your thyroid and ovarian cysts that can happen. So for you ladies who are interested in how I've been doing that, that will be a whole separate episode in itself. And Stacy, who's been helping both Liz and I through that, is going to be on this podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm excited. But going back to like basically summing up physical changes in pregnancy, because there are tons, especially through the first trimester and second and then third, let alone, postpartum and giving birth. For you, Liz, in comparison and contrast with Ridgely and Elena for the hospital and for giving birth at home, what were like the biggest takeaways for you?
I think just the comfort, like how comfortable I was at home, physically, emotionally. But I think there's a great just snapshot picture in my head of the contrast between the two situations. When I was on the hospital bed, I was so uncomfortable with Ridgely that I ended up giving birth on my back, which I never thought I would. And the midwife doctor who was on staff, she asked me if she could coach me through giving birth. And I just needed that. I was so uncomfortable, and it took a lot more force than I understood I needed. And so I just had to give everything I had. And it was, at the end, they cut his cord because he wasn't breathing properly, and they took him to the side of the room, and, instead of letting him get all that oxygen and stuff. But it was just such a difference between my home birth, because Elena, I was so much more comfortable in that pool. And then when I pushed Elena out, Richard was turning to get the camera to like take a little video of me, and he turned around and I was standing up.
What?
I just stood up with Elena, and just like picked her up, and he was like, "How are you? How is she standing? Is she allowed to do that?" Like, I just stood up with my baby, and I unwrapped my baby's cord. Her cord was around her throat or her neck a couple times, and I unwrapped it,
which is also very natural.
Yeah, super normal. Yeah, and I just put her to my chest. She was also not breathing properly right away, and she was fine in a couple minutes. Whereas the hospital had to take 13 minutes working on Ridge. Pulling out really every trick in their bag to get him breathing. So it was just the power that I felt, and the competence and the confidence, versus just having that immediate postpartum just kind of like swept away, with Ridgely, and made more difficult, is a big contrast.
Yeah, because then you got to see like, oh, I actually do know what I'm doing, even naturally as a mom. I can see what my baby needs, which I couldn't even imagine that type of, like you said, confidence and competence. I love that you used both of those words for even raising Elena, and saying like, no, I know what my daughter needs. I knew exactly from when she was in my womb to the moment that she was born, how to protect her and care for her, and submit that to the Lord and to my husband. And I'm sure that has continued through raising your children as well. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to experience that. Yeah. Well, and sadly, finishing up on our last topic, because this has been so fun and so incredibly easy to interview you and talk to.
We're friends.
It is. It does help. But also, too, you're just amazing to talk to.
Oh, thanks.
I wanted to talk more about the nutrition and health, which you did mention a little bit in your pregnancies. But because we did talk about that a lot, I would love to specifically hear postpartum. What do you feel like helped heal you the most? And I've heard through midwives and midwiferys and talking to people a lot about this, that having things pre-made and pre-made meals and those types of things planned out in advance make a significant difference for you and your husband normally postpartum. A lot of broths and things like that. But I also know every body is different and nutrients wise. I'd love to know, did you get blood work done afterwards, or they told you how you were deficient, or did you do any of those things? Did you feel like you needed any of that, or was it more natural?
No, I didn't do blood work. My midwives were amazing. They came to my home multiple times after I gave birth to Elena. But I think with both meal trains, my church set up a meal train for me.
Community.
Yeah, community. And I was not shy to say, hey, what I needed, right?
Right.
Nutrient dense. I asked for homemade, if possible, organic. I really did. I asked for like good quality ingredients.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need.
Yeah, exactly. And I think women are so reluctant to ask for help, and they're like very apologetic, but I don't think that's the right space for that. You literally have a dinner plate size wound in your body, and you need to be taking care of it and resting and getting proper nutrients.
That's crazy. Yeah. A dinner plate sized wound.
Yeah. And people don't realize that. Yeah. So rest is number one, like being in and around your bed for the first couple weeks after. But yeah, I think just, I actually encapsulated my placenta as well, which is, so I had my placenta made into capsules to take. Most mammals eat their placenta after they give birth, and that's a natural, like we lose so many nutrients. And when we give birth, so it's important to restore the iron and the nutrients and the minerals that we lose during the labor process.
Which there is a lot of A, D, and K in your placenta, which I am going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, so that's basically it. Making sure that you're eating, like think of rich foods like meatloaf and, you know, think like even liver and organ meat that you,
Absolutely.
if you can't stomach it straight, then like take capsules or something. But yeah, things like that.
It's also easy to hide those things though in food, like the
Yes.
taste of it.
And I would recommend for nutritionally real food for pregnancy and real food for gestational diabetes. I think
I got
has
both of those books because Liz recommended
Yeah, Lily
them.
Nichols. She kind of is the current authority on all things pregnancy nutrition.
And I think she has a podcast as well.
Yeah, she does.
She, I think I heard her actually on someone else's podcast, not hers specifically, even though I was following her. Oh, I think it was A Spillover by Alex Clark. She interviewed her and I loved hearing, you know, because she, obviously that is more of like an in general podcast about like overall health and kind of crunchiness. But Alex kind of talks about everything conservative on hers. So it was more of that, like, give me the basics of it. And you could tell that she wanted, like, the basics was too, like, it's too basic.
Yeah.
But her podcast is also so enriched in knowledge. And that's why even for me, it's easy for me to go over the basics because the basics for me is my depth of knowledge in that because I'm not a holistic nutritionist, though I do help with holistic nutrition and helping people understand the vitamins and minerals in your body and what they do for certain parts of your body, because that goes into a lot of body work. And if you're deficient in these things, I'll literally see it in people's bodies, or I can feel the tissue is off. And same thing with children too.
Yeah. I will say, because I had gestational diabetes with both, my midwives commented on this because my diet was so healthy and clean and nutrient dense. They were like, whoa, your placenta is impressive. They were like, it is so thick. It is so, like healthy.
And it's also dark in color too.
Yeah.
And you can see like the blues and the purples and the pinks and reds, where a lot of people, when they give birth, especially, and I hate to say this, but when you have a vegan and or more vegetarian based diet, because you're not getting in, especially that A, D, and K, and and especially B12, certain types of Bs, your placenta is going to be a lot weaker, and it can tear easily. It's literally like it can be mushy as well, as opposed to like a full blown muscle coming out of you. So that's another thing. I should say, I think it's B9 and B12 is what's low, which actually goes into what I was going to say about folate and folic acid, which can be a huge, very confusing for a lot of women out there. There's also a lot of women like myself that cannot process folate properly. So we have to, like, you can't take it basically the synthetic way. And the synthetic way, which by the way, for my first 2 pregnancies, I was taking it synthetically. And I really do wonder if that harmed my babies. So, because I didn't know. Again, it's all this like this research and information that you're not told. And also mine were so early on that it's not like a midwife, or because you're like, I'm just trying to interview people. I didn't even have someone on my team yet. So you can feel really alone. And that's why I want you guys to know that if you ever feel alone in your pregnancies, you can always reach out to people like Liz and I and be like, help me. What do I do? I'm 2 weeks in, and we can help give you a little bit of a base.
It's not too early to start
asking.
Getting people.
But also, if you're sexually active and you're married, you need to know, obviously, the blessing, I don't want to say repercussions, but the blessing of having intercourse with your husband is that you could get pregnant. So it's good to start thinking about these things even, and I know it sounds nuts to do that in premarital, but it is good to kind of have a team around you with like, okay, I know this friend has a really good midwife, so if I do get pregnant right away, I can jump right into that. But just to talk about the difference between folic acid and folate, because that confused me for so long and no one could give me a straight up answer. Folic acid is the synthetic form of vitamin B. That's also known as this huge word acid. It's petrolamiglumic acid. It's used in supplements to add, and it's normally added into processed foods. So like flours and breakfast cereals and starches to help keep it formulated. So if you are someone like me who struggles with, I was diagnosed with celiac disease and Hashimoto's, and basically gluten intolerances are made out of things like this, out of these synthetic chemicals that are put into our food. And how many women do you know that have thyroid issues?
Yeah, or gluten intolerances. Yeah,
exactly. Most
or
of them.
sensitivities. Yeah,
Most of them. So it's not that people could not I'm sure a lot of people could take folic acid and do decently, but you're now getting folic acid directly into your intestines. So, and to say it's not horrible, but a lot of women cannot convert it to the 5-MTHF. So the 5-MTHF is taken out of it, and you'd have to convert it into it. So if you take folate, right?
Yeah.
Folate has the 5-MTHF where your body can convert it. And let me tell you, ladies, it is an actual, it's something missing in your DNA. And there is a whole generation of millennial women, and especially the next generation, Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha, they are seeing the lowest birth rates of a lack of 5, M as in mouse, T as in Tom, H as in hippo, and then F as in Frank, ever in people's bloodline. And it's because of the synthetic chemicals that we've had raging through our bodies for so long. Our body literally can't process it anymore. Yep. So I would recommend for all women to not ever take folic acid and just take straight folate, because then,
so when you're looking at your prenatals, you look for folate,
which most of them have folic acid.
Yes.
So, and that's the other thing, prenatals, most of them are a yolk, I like to say.
Yeah, they're woefully insufficient.
Yes. And it's because they don't have the amounts that you need. I do think that I understand that people do want to do like all natural births and not get checked at all. But I do think that for your first pregnancy, and if like for me, I've had a lot of miscarriages, it is good to know like where your base blood, like where you're at. And again, I've mentioned this before, when you get your blood drawn, it is a snapshot of only that one day. So if you want to see something consistently, get it the same day, the same time of your month for 3 months in a row, and you can get a little bit of consistency to check in. Or you can get a hair skin analysis where they'll actually see through your dead skin cells and hair cells, like how long you've had a deficiency in for. But you want to make sure that you're getting folate in, because it helps basically prepare the baby's spine and the heart health and all those things. And my mom didn't know she was pregnant with me until much later. And not that was a bad thing. I mean, how would she know? But she did drink alcohol and those things. And I now have spinal bifida at the bottom of my spine. I was born with it because my mom never took folate. And also she has thyroid issues. So to boot, because she wasn't taking it before even getting pregnant, let alone during pregnancy, that then generationally passed on to me, where I have a 5-MTHF deficiency in my DNA. And I could, if I don't take it during my pregnancies, it will pass on to my kids.
Yeah.
So that's something important for people to look at. And then I've already discussed this before, but high vitamin A is amazing for postpartum recovery for moms, but also for your baby. Because vitamin A, that's why I jokingly say it's probably at the top of the vitamin list, because that for stem cells directs and tells your stem cells what to do in every single way. And they've actually said in hospitals the opposite, to not take vitamin A.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. And I literally don't know why. Like their argument for it, when I've heard it, do you know what they say, Liz? So they say that when you take vitamin A, it creates more of a miscarriage because you have an overly plentiful amount of stem cells. When on earth is having extra of something, would your body go, no, not for the baby?
I don't know.
That doesn't make sense.
I haven't researched this yet.
But someone has talked about how, because, playing devil's advocate here, they did say that when you have like some people have over plentiful like stem cells, that their body then thinks, well, I need to excrete it because it's too much. I've never seen the science behind that. I just want to say. And then vitamin D and K also are just really great, beneficial for you and the baby, and for postpartum for healing your gut. But I do have extra nutritional information. It's just, the thing is, every single woman is so different that instead of giving the nutritional information or like, oh yeah, go get this prenatal or whatever, I want to say that I agree with Liz. Getting masticated organs and even blood from a very reputable source is amazing, nutrient dense, and it has all those things that we mentioned. I still think that taking folate on its own would be safe, especially for someone like me. I would have to. But checking in with your body and getting to know what you are missing to be able to provide for your child is not even just necessary, it's your job now as a mother.
Yeah.
And you do have to do that before the baby comes, and to be able to support your baby and not pass on generational diseases, generational basically just mistreatment from your parents' side and even your husband's side as well, because the sperm has to be healthy as well. So I would rather, instead of giving a laundry list of things that I support and all that stuff, I would rather encourage you ladies that are checking in, and for you husbands, check in with your generational history. Check in and see, like, does my family have thyroid issues? Does this family tend to go to more like cancer? What type of cancers? Is it brain? Is it heart-based? Is it testicular? Is it more gut? Like all those things. And then take food to support those things, to help
smart.
right? To support you.
Yeah.
And then also the baby's health. And because you want to, whatever you start taking beforehand, let alone in the womb, is going to be what's going to support your baby for the rest of their life and be their, their baseline, their cornerstone of their health.
Yeah, customize it to your genetics.
Exactly. Genetic past, and then also what you've also been dealt throughout your life, because also injuries happen and things like that. But outside of that, we're here to help support you, both Liz and I, and we're going to be praying for you ladies and for you men who are listening, for the husbands. But ultimately, we want you to know that when it comes to holistic health, it's about that individual lifestyle and discernment from the Lord, and being intimate and praying with him over what you should be doing daily, especially for your children. And we do pray that the husbands are excited and happy for the headship in that, and that the wives know when to step in and take over, and how the delegation happens in your guys' marriage. But I thank you so much, Liz, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Right. It was fun.
It was fun.
Liz also too does have birth story recordings that she's done. She's currently in a season of life where she has 2 kids under 5, like we mentioned before. So she is collecting Christian birth stories. And if you guys want to reach out to her, we can put an email. If you think your birth story would be awesome and beneficial for other ladies to hear, or even if it was difficult and you think it would be great for women to hear. She is currently collecting them right now, and then hopefully will come out with her own podcast, because there's no podcast out there that's just Christian birth stories.
Yeah, keep your ears to the ground for Womb to World podcast.
Womb to World, I love that. But I love you, Liz. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait for this to air.
Yes.
All right, guys, keep casting seeds, and we'll see you soon. We hope you enjoyed learning how to cultivate God's creation from a biblical perspective. Holistic health is to prioritize whole person wellness through Christ. Like and comment on what topics we're casting seeds or casting pearls.
If you found this information provided useful, subscribe to our podcast for future updates, leave a review to help us improve, and share this episode. We would like to remind you before we leave that perfect health cannot be attained in this world.
Only spiritual salvation through sanctification and repentance to God and turning away from sin will give you a perfect body in the kingdom come. Nourish yourself in the Word, in prayer, and in biblical fellowship daily.
Thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to our listeners for making this podcast possible.
Always praying.
Keep casting seeds.